Furthermore, differences found in hearing and deaf children's lives are: when hearing parents have deaf child, firstly they rush to medical experts who suggest that this child might face challenges to cope with society without language. So it will be better to provide speech therapy. Actually, there are many options to choose for deaf children, like sign language, oralism, sign system, or visualization, etc. Yet they insist on speech and auditory training to be given to a deaf child. Also, they get information about how special educators are well set to teach deaf children through oralism and speech, as well as parents need to pay 24-hour attention on deaf children. Special educators are appointed for this work, and parents are also informed to pay for all training and additionally get hearing aids or cochlear implant for their deaf child. Hearing parents get puzzled, but they decide to follow what medical experts suggest, since they have never met with deaf role model whose consultation would help them to understand that deaf children can also succeed in their lives. Following the same, hearing parents send their deaf children to deaf schools, where the school's curriculum doesn't match the deaf children's need. Eventually, deaf children face language deprivation in their lives. When deaf children use sign language to communicate with each other, but teachers stop them from doing so or tell them only practice speech. In order to develop children's literacy skills, they emphasize that they should follow science system which depends on spoken languages grammar. All these points show that school system is not deaf friendly. Besides all these unfavorable reasons, there are some favorable reasons. There are more than 800 deaf schools across India, and many of them use oralist method to teach. Some of the schools follow science system or total communication method. And very few schools out of those 800 deaf schools, probably 5 or 10, incorporate Indian Sign Language to teach deaf children. These schools follow bilingualism mode of education, in which, on the basis of first language, like ISL, they teach any other spoken language to develop literacy skills. In these schools, from hearing teachers and deaf teachers to deaf students, all communicate in ISL proficiently. How? Let me explain. If a deaf child doesn't acquire sign language, then he or she faces language delay by the age of 3 or 4 years old. And when a deaf child first goes to a deaf school in which everyone is using sign language, whether in a school and hostel, the child automatically observes sign language and also starts expressing in sign language with his or her friends or peers. All this stimulates language development in children. Since hearing teachers use sign language as a mode of teaching for any subjects and communication, some of them are also aware about deaf culture, and it generates good connections between teachers and students. On the other hand, some deaf children are born to deaf parents and receive sign language in critical period. So the deaf child's foundation of their first language is strong. Hence, it becomes easier for them to grasp knowledge in schools and attain good literacy skills. This is the most appropriate approach. On comparing the modes of teaching like oralism, total communication science system, mode of sign language is the best. Few schools follow a good process for approaching deaf children by giving options in mode of teaching such as oralism, science system, or bilingualism and adapt accordingly. If they choose an oralist method, schools suggest adding sign language for deaf children for better understanding of surroundings, so that deaf children can use language according to situations. When teachers want to develop literacy skills through science system, that is also good, and along with that teacher can summarize the points in sign language. But sadly this is not the case in India. Completely opposite of this is taking place in schools.